Good morning or good afternoon, wherever you might be.
Morning.
Welcome to the webinar today. It's Dave Kennedy and Eric Edelmayer. How come you're always Dave? Can I be Dave?
I'd like to be Eric once in a while.
Anyhow, but the titles are right. So I'm Eric Edelmayer, this is Dave
Right.
Kennedy. We're here with the Noble Company. Today we're going to be showing you our Noble Deck waterproofing membrane. It's designed for exterior applications. Just a little bit of introduction here. Always follow the written directions. This is really more of an overview. Read the actual written directions. Our substrate here is going to be basically following either the Tile Council of America or the ANSI standards for our substrate. So that's real critical. But again, the Noble Deck membrane itself is a chlorinated polyethylene membrane, 40 mils thick or 1 millimeter. It comes on a roll, 6 feet wide by 50 feet long, or 300 square feet. It would meet the ANSI 118.10 standard for thin set load bearing bonded waterproofing membranes. If you happen to be using it in an area where the plumbing inspector might be showing up, such as a shower, or in some cases where it is hooked up to the drain and the plumber needs the authorization that it's approved, it does meet both the IAPMO or the ICC listings. It meets high performance of over 1/8 of an inch of movement per the ANSI standard for crack isolation, 118.12, and probably most importantly for today's discussion, it is suitable for over-occupied space.
Right.
Let's get into this, Dave.
Yep. Okay, so first of all, we're going to examine our substrate. Okay. As you can see here, I have a wood structural substrate. I have 2 layers of plywood, 3/4 inch plywood. You want to stagger the seams if you're going to do 2 layers of 3/4 inch plywood over a, to your typical ceiling joists or truss structure. Okay, you want to always make sure that that system is always going to meet the L360 standards for deflection.
Right.
Okay? You may have to consult an architect or your building inspector for that too.
It's got to be able to support that both live and dead load, that when you have the party for the holidays and you end up with 75 people on your 10 by 10 porch, you got to make sure it'll hold the weight.
Yes, you do.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. All right. Now, you have to have a minimum of 1/4 inch per foot slope on the system. Now, if you're using a cement backer board like I have in this mock-up right here, I have to have my 1/4 inch per foot slope built into my structure.
So you'd be sistering it or something.
If you have a flat structure, you're going to have to sister some 2x4s alongside of it before you put your substrate on to get that 1/4 inch per foot slope.
Right. You really don't want to go in there and start cutting them down and lowering your.
No, you don't want to. You want to be compromising your integrity of your
just making sure.
Yep. So again, no matter which way we go with the mortar bed or the backer board, I have to have a 1/4 inch per foot minimum slope to drain. So away from the walls to our drip edge, or away from the walls to the drain.
To the actual drain itself, if there is one. Okay. Yep.
Okay. Now, in this mock-up, I'm using CBU, just your common cement board.
Yep.
I have a 1/2 inch cement board on my 1/4 inch per foot slope wood frame decking. So I've bonded it down to manufacturer's instructions by using a modified thin set and your screws.
As well as screwing it down.
Screws to bonding it down or screwing it down. Mm-hmm.
Typical backer board installation, glue and
backer
screw.
board installation. Now, with the backer board, I know with some of the manufacturers say, you're supposed to tape and mud with thin set with the backer board. With the Noble Deck, you don't have to do that. You're going to want to have like an 1/8 inch gap between your backer boards. That is going to be your, I would say, control joint in there. The Noble Deck itself is the tape.
Okay.
It's going to bond over that.
So being a crack isolation membrane, it'll bridge right over that without any issues.
Correct.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So we talked a little bit about a mortar bed. So if I have a flat structure, I can create my slope by using a mortar bed or cement slope.
Some of the manufacturers have products that'll.
Some of the manufacturers have pre-made products to create that slope, just so it's a cementitious product. You want to meet, of course, the TCNA standards, ANSI standards when you put that mortar
Right.
bed on the
And always
system.
make sure that it's suitable for the application.
So always make sure it's suitable applications. That's always a exterior rated product.
Okay, that works. Now, speaking of a flat substrate, which is quite often, what you're probably going to run into in a lot of these decks, that it's not going to be sloped for you. Some of these decks you may or may not have the load carrying capabilities of putting a mortar bed in there. I mean, you're looking at, roughly 12 pounds a square foot of mortar.
Correct.
And it might not be able to support all that weight as well as your live loads. So I know we've got a product here that we're just kind of introducing. Why don't you talk about this, Dave?
So we've got a product we've had out for several years. It's called our Pro Base 2 pre-made bases. As you can see, this particular one is a 1/4 inch per foot slope built into the base.
A little bit hard to see there, but it's sloping
It's
from
sloped,
from your hand down at 1/4 inch per foot.
Correct. It is a foam and honeycomb composite base. So we've taken the 3-pound foam and applied a 1/4 inch of honeycomb to the top of that base.
Yep.
Structural honeycomb. It gives it a 235 PSI
Compressive strength.
rating to the top of that.
Yep.
So we pre-apply the Noble Deck to that, and basically you're just going to
Let me throw this one in here.
throw that one up there. Yep. So basically you're just going to thin set that down or EXT that down to your wood or concrete substrate.
Right. So if you have a flat substrate, this is actually giving us that pitch or that
This will
slope.
actually give you that pitch. So, we'll make these in pieces, in particular sizes that you want. Now this piece, like I say, I have an A piece, and then we'll just butt it up to a B piece.
Yep.
You can see that the two pieces will match up. It has a 2-inch overlap flap on the upper piece.
Yep.
That'll then just seam seal right down to your lower piece. So it gives you a positive overlap seam.
Then going from the widths, we got the overlap here.
Yep. And
So
going
my next piece would come in here. These would overlap together and
That's
seam
correct.
right
And
together.
you can just piece this whole system together, and then just give it an upturn, cap strip basically up against your wall.
Right. So I mean, as far as if you're dealing with a flat deck, whether you really have the concerns for the weight of the mortar bed or not, this is definitely a way to go for speed and ease of installation.
It is. It is. Now, if you have a slope deck already, we can make these pieces in a flat piece, and then basically just again, just so it's going to give you a lot less weight to the system.
Jumping back to the original thing. I mean, for today's discussion, let's talk about more of a conventional situation where most of your people are probably going to run into. They're not going to have the new product from the Noble company, but they might have a plywood substrate like this, or it could be a mortar bed substrate like you said, the slope. So let's just kind of continue down that path.
Okay, so I've got my CPU substrate on here.
Yep.
Okay, and then I'm going to talk about the way I want to run my seams. So if I have
the membrane itself.
Yeah, so I have a deck that's more than 6 feet.
Yep.
I'm going to have a seam somewhere because the Noble Deck comes in a 6-foot width. So I can either have a horizontal seam. I just have a board here with a seam on it. I can do a horizontal seam.
So the membrane's running that way.
So the membrane's running that. So you're going to start from your drip edge or your drain, and then work up with your first row, and then you'll add a piece on up above that and overlap 2 inches.
So you're really installing a membrane essentially the same way you would a shingle.
Yes, you're going to shingle overlap. Right,
okay.
Right.
Yep.
You wouldn't roof your house from the top down.
No. No.
Okay.
Only once.
Only once. Now, obviously, you want to be efficient with the layout and not having waste in the membrane.
Yep.
You can do that in a vertical fashion.
Okay.
It's approved, so you can run the seam in a vertical fashion. It doesn't matter if you run the seam left or right.
Okay.
Okay. Here. Now that we have the seam out here, I just want to illustrate the proper way of seam sealing. Okay. So I'm using our Noble Seal 250 sealant. Hand me the tube of 150 sealant real quick there too. So talk a little bit about the 250 sealant versus the 150 sealant. So the 150 sealant we've had for many years, do our seam sealing and corner.
Right.
Now that is
It's a sealant,
It's a
Dave.
sealant, yes. Sorry. It's a solvent-based sealant, sorry. Couldn't get the words out, eh?
Sorry, I can't help you.
It's a solvent-based sealant.
Right.
Okay? But we've come out with the Noble Seal 250 in the last couple of years. It's a low VOC sealant.
Right,
It's a moisture cured sealant
right.
too. If you're using it in the showers for flood testing, you can flood test within 30 minutes
Right.
using that
Yeah,
sealant.
and this one actually tells you right on it that it's a thermosetting elastomeric hybrid polymer.
Yes, it is.
There you go.
There you
Glad I could help.
go. It can be air freighted overnight too,
Yeah,
if you need to.
Zero VOCs.
Because of zero VOCs. The viscosity is a little bit thinner than the 150, so it's a little bit easier to work
And you
with.
say it's a moisture cure, so really the humidity in the air,
Humidity
or
air.
maybe misting it, but that's really what sets it off.
It's gonna kick it off.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yep.
All right, so, okay.
So just
Get
like
these out
I
of your way.
said, just show you a proper way of seam sealing. So we have a minimum of 2-inch overlap on our deck here.
Yep.
Okay. I'm going to put a
Hold that up for you.
Yeah, a 3/8 thick bead of sealant, about 1 inch in. Make sure you have plenty to have 100% coverage.
And again, the seam can run either direction. In most cases, you'd probably
either direction.
ideally run it in a
Okay.
shingled
All right.
overlap.
Hand me that margin trowel, some
Yep.
tub towel there.
Margin trowel.
So my favorite tool to do my seam sealing is a margin trowel. I will just take my margin trowel and tip it upside down and just put some pressure on it. And then just right on top of the overlap, I will just put some pressure working
Good
in.
firm pressure.
Good
Do
firm
that with a
pressure.
little, probably a hand roller also.
You can use a hand roller also. Now, and then I'll make sure that once I do it one time, I will kind of plow that out. As you see, the sealant is oozing out on the leading edge.
Kind of bleeds that
Kind
edge.
of bleeds that out. You want to see that all the way down.
You know that it's there then, and it's
You know
sealed
that
off
it's there.
tight.
Again, put some pressure on it.
Dragging your
Thank
board
you
with
for holding
you.
me the board. Yep. Okay. Now, I'm gonna double check, make sure that I have 100% coverage underneath that seam, which I do.
Yep.
Okay. That's very important that you have 100% coverage. Now, instead of just taking my margin trowel and just wiping it all over the place, just hand me a tub of towel there. Okay.
Feel like
So,
Vanna White here.
Vanna White, yes.
It's not that
So
easy to do either.
So I'm taking my tub of towel, which is a great product to clean off the sealant off your tools and hands. I will then just take my margin trowel, just flip it over like a spatula and just basically scrape that
All that excess out of
excess
there.
off of there. And not smear it all over the place.
Oh yeah.
Okay. As you can see, nice, clean seal.
Need another one, Dave.
And
The price is right.
okay.
Perfect. Looks good.
Yep.
Let me get that out of your way.
Yeah, let's get that
so you
out.
don't get it all over your shirt.
Okay.
All right.
We're done. Oh, so if you're going to do a vertical
being harassed
installation-
by the audience.
Being harassed by the If you're going to do a vertical installation, you may want to consider using either our cap strip with a sealant.
Yep.
Yep. Or our aqua blue membrane with the mesh tape.
One of our newer products that we
One of our newer
introduced this
products.
past year.
It's kind of a little bit of belt and suspenders with the seal
Yep.
on there.
Makes some people sleep better at night.
Some people sleep better at night.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Now bonding down the membrane to our substrate, whether it's a mortar bed or a cement backer board.
Right.
Okay, you can either use modified thin set to bond it.
The 118.14 thin set,
Correct.
or better.
Or better. Yep.
Better is always better.
You know, using a 1/8 V-notch trowel, you don't need really any more than that because if you put much more than that, you're just going to be oozing it out. You're going to get lumps and that on it. You want to make sure that it's nice and flat once you roll it in with a 75-pound roller or flat side of a trowel.
Right. That roller makes it a lot easier.
Yeah. The thing with modified thin set using that, especially if you're in warm conditions where a lot of sunlight is, you're only going to be able to do a certain amount of area at a time before it flashes over.
Mm-hmm.
And once it flashes over, you know you're not going to get a bond or a transfer of the thin set to the deck.
Right, right.
So you always got to be conscious of what the conditions that you're working with it in. Okay. Or you can bond it down with our Noble EXT glue. Okay. It's it's just a solvent-based glue. You're just going to put it down with that 3/32 or 1/8" V-notch trowel, depending on the conditions that you have.
Yep.
You're gonna run it in a shingle direction. As you see, I have it underneath my membrane now. You're gonna want to get a little tacky on there, so you've got a lot more time to work with it than you would modified thin set.
Yeah.
On there.
I know we've in the past used that both horizontally, vertically. It's sticky stuff.
It's sticky stuff.
Okay.
Again, you still have to worry about the conditions, the sunlight and everything. You may want to have a tent over that deck if you've got hot sun onto that.
Yeah. And I know that we have some, people, some guests watching us here today, that some technical people, and just so that we're clear, sticky stuff is a technical term.
Sticky, yes.
Yeah,
See, once I've got this on here, I mean, it just does not come off, but it has some legs on it.
Right.
And you can push it right back down.
Right.
And with the EXT too, it also will enhance the crack isolation properties of the membrane. It's like putting rubber down with rubber.
Right.
Versus thin set. Thin set will get brittle and hard.
Right.
It's not gonna give. The EXT will give.
Just elongate or gum right out.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. Instead of just, obviously, we're not just going to put the sheet down flat, that we're doing something against the house here.
Correct. So some of the biggest mistakes I see in installing the Noble deck out there is that they don't want to pull off, especially if it's a retrofit or remodel, okay? They don't want to pull off the siding or the brick veneer that's on the house to create an upturn.
Right. They just want to run to it and call it good.
They'll just butt the membrane up to it and then use the sealant to caulk against it and hope and pray that that doesn't leak.
Yeah, that's what silicone's for.
That's what. So yeah.
Joking.
Eventually, you may have a failure on that.
Right.
It's always good to get an upturn. So pull off, with a toe kick or cement or
vinyl siding,
or your vinyl siding, whatever. Pull that off. Make sure you get an upturn, 6-inch upturn that you can see that I have here in this illustration.
Yep.
Okay. Now, if it's a new construction and you have your house wrap on there, make sure you put your house wrap, as you can see here, overlap it over your upturn, because water is going to migrate through the siding, get into the house wrap, and then it's just going to wick down.
Continue in a shingle direction again.
Yeah, you don't want to leave that top edge of that upturn exposed.
Right. Okay.
So water can migrate down behind
that. Okay.
Now, if you have a cinder block or cement wall brick that you can't remove and you need to do an upturn at it, and you're going to use a cold-based tile against it, you can do what they call a riglet. As you can see in the illustration here, you make a cut into the block on a 45-degree angle uphill, and then just stuff the membrane into that riglet and take a bead of 250 or 150 sealant and then seal that in.
Right, or I imagine they could run an aluminum flashing or some sort of a drip edge up onto that riglet. Again, just overlapping the membrane.
Overlap the membrane, seal it in with the sealant.
Yeah.
Correct.
What about removing perhaps a grout joint or something in the brick?
You could remove a grout joint and use that as the riglet too.
You just want to tuck that.
You want to tuck that in. That's
okay.
Correct.
All right.
So drop offs. Okay, drip edges.
Yep.
Okay. You can see here I have a standard roof drip edge over my fascia. Now I have a decorative fascia in there.
Right.
Okay. I run the membrane over the drip edge. Shingled overlap under
Shingled again.
It's a 3-inch wide drip edge, which is common. I'll run that 2 inches over the drip edge. I'll leave it back about 1 inch off the edge of the drip edge, so my membrane is not exposed to any weather. And then you can see I just have a piece of tile here that I'll lay over that. So when you go to tile, you're going to want to bring your tile out to that edge of the drip edge, or a little bit further. You may have a profile or something decorative at the end of that too. But you can see now my membrane is not exposed.
Something that'll break that capillary action.
Break that capillary action.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep, that makes sense. Okay. Now I see you have a healthy bead of sealant At the terminal edge there again, same method as we did earlier?
Same method. So I've got 250 sealant, been here for a few days, and that 250 sealant, I cannot peel that off that metal drip edge.
Right,
It sticks that good. to
okay,
that. Yep. Of course, bonds very well to the membrane.
right,
So,
right.
you
All
wanna
right.
treat that just like any other seam.
Right. Okay, makes sense. The entryway or going into the house here, my typical door, I mean, I know that's an area where a lot of people struggle with it, that they don't flash it or don't know how to flash it.
So another big mistake that I see out there, and I don't care if it's a tile deck, if it's a wood deck or a concrete patio. I see this all the time where that is run right up to the bottom of the threshold because they don't want to step right there.
Right,
The issue with that is water, no matter how well you seal in your patio door, water is going to eventually migrate under that door and into your living space. And as a builder for many years and a lot of the remodels that I've done, I don't know how many times I had to replace the wood substrate inside because it's been rotted.
right.
Black ants have gotten in there because they've had those decks right tight to the thresholds. So you always, when you're planning this out, you always want to try to make sure that you have an area to upturn. Like you can see in my mock up here, I have a 4-inch upturn, very typical.
Right.
That's not too big of a step there,
Yep.
but you have that area where water is going to sit here and not creep underneath.
So, you really need to consider this when you're building these decks is, not only how your door is transitioning into the deck area. I mean, you need the upturn here to contain the membrane as a curb, if you will, and to keep that water from getting there. So, with my slope starting here and going out, you really need to plan ahead that, do I have space for this?
You do have, that's correct. If you're building that deck, you want to make sure you drop it down far enough to give you an upturn.
Right.
Now, if you're doing a mortar bed with a flat deck and it's got a 1/4 inch per foot slope, you're going to have to make sure that from your edge of your deck, 1/4 inch per foot, when you get to your door, I still have an upturn. So you need to plan on that.
Right. And as far as bringing the membrane into the house,
you can bring the membrane into the house. It will help that aspect. But again, you always want to make sure that you try to get an upturn there.
okay, what about our jams here, Dave?
So jams. So there is a code that is, most building codes require that you, what they call pan the jams. And typically they'll just use a self-sealing peel and stick tape to pan the jam on the floor and, 8 to 10 inches up the wall.
Right.
So you can use the Noble deck when you bring that in on the upturn and into the jam and use your outside corners at the jam.
Yep.
Again, use the Noble sealant to
Right.
bond that in 100%, and then take a self-sealing peel and stick tape to run down the jam and overlap onto your outside corners. There's several products out there that you can do that. There's a Grace Ficor, there's a the ice and water shield, whatever you choose to use.
Right, but these products, when you're basically installing that door and screwing into that, this type of membrane is really a kind of a self-healing membrane that really seals around that screw.
It does.
Or fastener.
It does. Yep.
Okay. All right. And then I mean, we got corners here.
Got corners here. Yes, those are outside corners.
So you got some pre-made corners that would go in here.
Yep. So these are our thin line pre-made corners. We have inside corners, outside corner. So if you have another wall intersecting the other one, you can use our inside corner at that point to plug up that pinhole area.
Right.
We have the outside corners that you see here. Our thin line corners, again, they're thin, just like.
Hence the name.
Hence the name, yeah. Unlike our CPE corners.
Right.
To our CPE outside corners is just bare CPE. There's no bondable fleece on that. So those have to be under the membrane.
Right.
Thin set doesn't bond to them.
Right.
So we've come up with the bondable fleece membrane corners. So thin set it can be on top of the membrane, and then thin set will bond to these.
Right. So
a lot less buildup.
The Noble deck splashed in here, the corners installed over it, the ice and water guard or the peel and sticks over that. Again, everything's in a shingle direction.
Everything's in a shingle direction.
Okay.
Correct.
All right. Okay, what do we got now?
Okay, drains. So
just happen to have one.
Just happen to have a drain. Want to hand me the no flux drain flashing down there on the floor too?
Oh yeah.
So if you're going to be using point drains, and with a point drain, you're going to have to create a multi-slope. with point
And
drains.
just to be clear, a point drain, or to some people, is a clamping ring style
It's a
drain,
clamping ring style drain.
or a non-linear drain.
So I have a clamping ring style drain that's already attached to my NobleFlex drain flash.
Right.
Okay, clamping, your typical clamping ring style drain.
Yep.
You can use a mortar bed. I'm going to put the drain in its desired location, and then I'm going to pour a mortar bed to that. So typically you would then do what we call the divot method, or use the NobleFlex drain flashing.
Right.
You would create a divot and then drop that drain flashing and tie it into the drain like you see here.
Right.
Okay. And then from there, pour a mortar bed on a 1/4 inch per foot slope.
And really the reason for that is that most of these clamping ring drains, that when you thread in your strainer, they don't bottom out low enough to be able to transition. So this really is a transition piece to get us from the surface down into the drain with the membrane without fish mouthing the outside.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. We have regular drain flashing, the floppy one, or we have our NobleFlex SD. The SD is our solid divot. It's already basically the mortar bed's underneath that piece. You're just going to bond that down to your substrate with EXT or modified thin set, and then you're going to pour your mortar bed.
Just bring your mud
1/4
to
inch
it.
per foot slope. So it saves you a step.
Right.
Just convenience item.
Okay. And that's really for a standard clamping ring type of drain.
Standard clamping ring type drain.
Cast iron or regardless of what it is. That's a transitional piece.
That's a transitional piece.
Okay. I mean, take
and
those.
then you'll use your, your weed protector and that. Now, so you can use our NobleFlex, or I'm sorry, our freestyle thin bed drain.
Right.
Okay. It is a PVC or ABS drain.
Right.
You can glue the pipe to it.
Okay.
Okay. It's a 1/2 inch profile.
Okay.
It has a clamping ring. Okay. Now, what's nice about
why a clamping ring?
Why clamping? Because we know that a clamping ring is bulletproof. Okay. Not like an unbonded flange drain.
Right, the membrane's mechanically connected right to that
mechanically and chemically connects to it.
Okay.
Yep. So what's nice is, like I said, 1/2 inch profile. I can run my mortar bed directly to the top of that 1/2 inch profile and 1/4 inch per foot slope out to that. So I could have a lower, my whole system would be a lot lower.
Right.
And there are products out there that'll go from 0 to 2 inch cementitious products that you can use. Check with your manufacturer, make sure that it is a exterior rated product.
It's going lower because your strainer will thread right down to right to the body.
Your strainer will thread right down to the body of that.
Right. Whereas, I mean, with a regular clamping ring drain, those bottom out at best 3/4 of an inch.
Right.
And this one basically is going down to essentially 0.
I can go right down to 0. You can see here how low that strainer goes.
Right.
Yeah. And then with a 1/2 inch profile, I can start my whole system out at a 1/2 inch.
Right.
And not at the 1.5 inch that I would use for the NobleFlex drain flashing.
So it's saving a lot of mortar and
save a lot more.
A lot of weight and everything else.
Now, always make sure you do your calculations of the size of the deck to how much volume your drains can manage.
Right.
When it rains.
Yep.
Okay. You may have to do multiple drains in that system.
Right.
Okay. Now, if you want to do a single slope and use a larger format tile, then you can do a linear drain.
And speaking of managing some water.
So have our freestyle thin bed drain. Okay. It is
I got that.
It is again a clamping ring drain. Okay. And we know that's bulletproof.
Yep.
Okay. And being that's a linear drain, you can do a single slope and use a large format tile.
Right.
And also with the freestyle thin bed drains, you can run them in tandem. You can butt them up and run as long as you want with these drains, multiple drains. And then we have a transition connection piece for our strainers to the next strainer. So it could make it look like all one strainer.
Okay.
Or we have a tile top strainer too.
Right.
So you can pretty much hide the system.
Right. What type of stainless is that?
This is a 316 stainless, marine grade stainless.
Okay.
And it's very simple to install the drain. You're going to glue the pipe to the drain directly, no Fernco hub.
Okay. Or 2-inch pipe.
Or 2-inch pipe. Yep.
Yep.
And then you're going to put it directly down top of that substrate and then create a 1/4 inch per foot slope to that.
Right.
Or you can use our Pro Base 2 single slope base. that will butt right to that and tie in.
Okay, again, clamping ring, got your little traps or filters, pre-filters,
Mhm,
316 stainless.
Yep.
What's my outside dimension? Did you say 1¼ inch?
The core, yeah, the height of the freestyle thin bed drains are 1¼ inch.
Okay,
It doesn't matter. We're transitioning over to 1¼ inch for all sizes.
okay,
That way. Large projects, we will make the drain to any length that you want, usually 50 or more. We have a project going on right now where we're making the drains at 96 inches long,
okay. All custom.
all custom. Mhm.
Okay. Can I take that from
You
you?
could take that. Mhm.
Don't drop it.
No drop.
All right.
Okay.
We made progress here, Dave. I mean, another area when you just happen to have your hand on it is the railing systems. I mean,
So again, these are problematic areas that we're always dealing with. Okay, as you can see here, I have your typical 4x4 treated railing that's there.
Yep.
You know, it's coming through the substrate or it's bolted to it. And now I have to waterproof that. Okay, as you can see here that I've used our outside corners again.
okay.
There's 4 of them.
I'll throw one
Yep.
of those at you.
4 of our outside corners, wrapped it around them, cut them to fit, make sure each corner was 2-inch overlap around each other.
Yep.
And 100% 250 sealant, bonded it down. And very thin profile with that.
Right,
Not,
yeah.
Hardly any buildup with those thin corners. So I have still a nice smooth transition with my tile to run over that.
Okay.
Now I've upturned it onto my post, a wood post. Now, a lot of times you'll see that these wood posts, you'll have a decorative material over it, whether it's cedar, a composite, or even the plastic sleeves that'll go over it and the
Right.
railings will hook into that. Well, people forget about waterproofing the post itself. If I don't waterproof my whole post, water will migrate behind my inside corners and down into my substrate, and I'm going to have a failure.
Okay.
So again, like I saw over in the wrap on the door frame, I've used the peel and stick self-sealing tape, and I've wrapped the post completely. And I even capped the top with it because you're going to have some type of a cap that's going to go
Right.
over that. And then when you put your decorative wood or whatever on it and you screw or nail into it, now it's going to be completely waterproofed, and then my cap will be on top of that.
Right.
And that'll be
So
waterproof too.
that if water does get inside of that,
The water will get
hole.
inside of that.
yeah,
Mhm.
I guess not.
So
if,
those are
when.
things that they forget about,
Right.
the little details.
Okay.
Now, if you have a steel post that has a flange and it needs to be bolted down through your tile and into your substrate, the only way you can be able to treat that is by pre-drilling the holes, pouring the sealant down in the holes completely, and then put your bolts in
Right.
and
With
hope
the
that
escutcheon plate
and hope
sealed
that
in.
that's going to, hold up over
Right.
time. Now, the most ideal way, obviously, to have a post or railing with your system is if you had a railing that fastened to the fascia that's outside of your waterproofing membrane.
Right. So basically a vertical mounted rail.
Vertical mounted railing,
Okay.
correct.
Yeah.
Mhm.
That makes sense.
Okay.
All right. So let's see here. Where are we going to now? we don't know where we're going right now. I'll use my cheat sheets.
Cheat sheet. Okay.
There we go. Okay. The membrane itself is designed for exterior applications. I mean, it's, it does have some UV inhibitors in it, so there's not a big issue there. With all of that said, as far as protecting the membrane, whether it's during the installation process itself
Mhm.
or while we're waiting to get tile on this.
So it's very important that you protect the membrane during the installation, even after the installation till your tile is installed. You may want to have a tent over it, you tarp over it. Now with foot traffic, put something on there that you're not going to be able to scuff the fleece off the
Right.
membrane. You want to make sure that fleece stays intact so your tile will bond properly to that.
Really, almost anything to protect
Yeah.
it at
Mhm.
all.
Yeah. We have a question. This system is acceptable over occupied spaces. It is the primary waterproofing over an occupied
Right, yeah.
space.
No, yeah,
Mhm.
no
Yep.
additional
No
waterproofing is
additional,
needed with it.
correct. Mhm. Yep. Now, if it's not over an occupied space, an open deck down below, you want to make sure that you don't have moisture issues coming in from underneath. You may
Right.
want to cap that off underneath
Yeah.
and insulate it. Just make sure that, you know, it's not going to be expanding and contracting too much underneath.
Right.
There.
Okay. But so, you know, so, you know, we do want some protection for the membrane from basically, you know, certainly foot or vehicle traffic after it's installed. Prior to it being installed,
Yep.
you know, we need to be at least be aware of the environmental conditions,
Yes.
whether it's 117 degrees or hotter in Arizona with no moisture, or whether it's 25 degrees in Minnesota
Yeah.
in June.
Yeah. You know, we always take into considerations the environment at the time, just like the EXT. You know, the EXT, you can only use that from 65 degrees up to 100 degrees, and that's it.
Okay.
You know, thin set as far as freezing, you know, consult your thin set manufacturer on the temperatures that you need for that.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. The question that comes up periodically is, do I need to put a drainage mat over it? I mean, we've established that it's suitable for occupied space. You know, drainage mats are a product that are out there. Do I have to use one?
You don't have to use us. It's not required by us. But now if you're in extreme freeze thaw wet areas, you may want to consider a drainage mat. You want to make sure that the moisture in the water weeps off under the system as fast as it can.
Right.
Because if water is trapped under the system with freeze thaw, when it does freeze, it can upheave the system.
So that drainage mat really allows the water or the moisture in the thin set to get out of it, to drop down to the air gap.
It does,
and evacuate itself out.
And then weep quicker.
So it's probably more critical in the northern climates to help protect it from freeze thaw. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. You know, just moving along is the tile itself going over top of this thing. I mean, considerations for tile.
Consideration. So you're going to want to make sure that you have a exterior rated tile. Again, consult your manufacturer on that tile that you want to use. Make sure it's an exterior rated tile.
More than likely a porcelain.
Porcelain tile.
Yep. Okay.
Yep.
Natural stone.
Natural stones. Correct.
A little bit more iffy, if that's a real word. But again, consult somebody.
Again, consult your manufacturer on the.
Right.
So.
Expansion joints, control joints.
So you're going to need expansion joints in your substrate as far as your cement board that we talked about. Make sure you have an 1/8 inch gap. You have your control. That's a control joint there.
In the panels as well as the
panels.
board.
Everything needs a control joint. If you're doing a mortar bed, you're going to want to tool in a control joint into that. You know, every 8 to 12 feet.
Right.
Okay. And using the Noble deck on top of that and the tile, you do not have to honor that control joint in your mortar bed and your
But you still need a soft joint in the tile.
Yeah, but you don't have to honor that.
Right. So if you're dealing with tongue and groove, don't knock it together as tight as you possibly can, so there's no room for it to move.
Exactly.
You want that 1/8 inch gap.
This whole system's going to expand and contract.
Yeah.
The Noble deck has a crack isolation in it that's going to, you know, take that movement and not transfer it into the tile.
Right. But it doesn't perform miracles.
It doesn't perform miracles.
Right. Okay.
Yep.
All right.
And then, of course, your soft joints in your tile, you're going to have your soft joints every 8 to 12 feet in both directions.
Change of planes.
Change of planes. Yep. So as the sun comes around, you know, on that deck, and all of a sudden it's getting hot, it's going to expand.
Right.
And if you don't have those, the system's going to what they call tent on you. It's got to go somewhere.
Right.
And it could pop right up off of that and have a failure.
You have to have room for movement.
You have to have your control or your soft joints.
As far as installing a tile, I mean, like you want to probably do a 5-spot method so everything can drain perfect.
So you're going to be doing, you know, to the standards again, 95% coverage on your tile, just like normal. Yeah. And then you're going to directional trowel that back buttered, you know, just like you normally would.
Yeah. So you don't want a 5-spot.
You don't want a 5-spot. No.
It's remarkable. Huh. Okay. 95% coverage.
Okay, we have
got a question. Can pedestals be used with the system? Yes, by all means.
Yes, it can be.
Yeah, by all means. I mean, there's a lot of different pedestal systems out there, but yeah, they definitely can. I mean, we won't get real in depth with that.
No.
If you have something going on that you're questioning a specific pedestal system,
Mhm.
let us know and we'll be
Yeah.
happy to work with you with that. And if we need to contact the pedestal company as well.
Just keep in mind, you don't want big gaps on those tiles where there's going to be sunlight shining through. But,
Yep. Okay.
Yep. Okay.
Where do we get to? Okay, we got the movement joints all covered. We got 95% coverage.
Yep.
We're looking good with all of that. Got to have expansion joints in the tile field, around the perimeters, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. The devils are in the details on this.
Right. So
Yeah.
what don't we want to do,
What
Dave?
don't we want to do? The Grim, okay, the Grim Reaper
Yeah.
just
Is
pop
that
up.
Yeah, that's Eric Edelmayer from the
That's
Tile
right.
Council of America. Yeah,
Okay.
or your favorite consultant, you pick.
Okay, so the biggest issue is going to recap of the lack of movement joints and the improper placement of where the movement
Right.
joints are. Okay, big issue. The other is improper railing details.
Again,
Again,
ideally vertical mounted.
Ideally vertical mounted. If you have to have them on the deck, make sure you have your corners, upturns, and sealed in properly. Okay. Okay. And then improper flashing. Again, you're flashing upturns
Yep.
and everything. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. And then lack of slope, and floor prep.
Minimum quarter-inch per
minimum
foot drain.
Quarter inch per foot. You're going to have a cementitious material to put the noble deck on, whether it's a mortar bed or a CBU.
Right.
Yep.
Okay.
And then the improper bedding of the tile.
Right.
That's
something that we make a joke of what the 5-spot method, but really it is critical that the tile is properly embedded into the proper thin set mortar to begin with to make this job successful. I mean, you've got to use the right process and you've got to do it right.
You got to do it right.
Reading the directions from other manufacturers that might be used are critical. Things do change. Follow the mixing directions. Do it right.
Yep.
Okay.
So
that pretty much wraps up most of the discussion I think here. I don't know if any questions rolled in late or not. I think we've addressed most of them as we were coming in. I hope you found something in this that was worthwhile to you. Exterior decks are a great opportunity to expand that living space, to get outside, but it is critical that you do them right. We're going to be giving a roll of Noble Deck away to somebody. We have a fishbowl over here, which Dave's not coming on camera with it. And the winner is
Jim
Reeson, Traditions in Tile, Briar Creek, Raleigh, North Carolina. Congratulations, Jim. We hope you're on listening. If you are, the secret password to get your roll is Rumpelstiltskin. I made that up. That's not true. We'll contact you. Congratulations. I think that's pretty much wraps it up. We're going to be having another webinar here. We're thinking probably August with the conventions coming up at the Surface Show or the Covering Show. That gets in the way a little bit. So we're probably looking at August, and I think we've decided we're going to go with a old-fashioned, traditional, full mortar bed shower installation using the old school method of mud.
Yeah, we're going to, like I said, playing in mud. We're going to, go through the pre-slope, how to do the pan liner. We're going to talk about backer boards and the proper use of the backer boards with that, whether it's foam board or cement board.
Yep.
So there's different details on those, and pouring a mortar bed.
Yeah, so we'll do some mud, and we might play with some new stuff at the same time.
Might play some new stuff.
So we'll get that date out to you once we've established the final date on that, but it'll probably be in August, so keep an eye out for that. We'll more than likely be sending notification out to everybody. But with that said, thank you for coming on. That's really it. If you would like to email us, Dave Kennedy's email is on the bottom there. He refused to give out his home number. I would have, but Dave said no.
Yeah.
So if you have any questions, reach into Dave Kennedy at dkennedy@noblecompany.com. And again, thank you very much.
Yeah. So if you have a deck that you are interested in doing, please reach out to me. Let's talk about the details. Make sure that you do it right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.